Hello, everyone. Welcome back to class. Today, we're going to be talking about a couple of very key battles in the Civil War. One of them you're probably very familiar with. You've heard of the Gettysburg Battle at Gettysburg. That's a big battle. There's a speech that Abraham Lincoln gives after that battle called the Gettysburg Address, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then we're going to also talk about the Battle at Vicksburg. These two battles were huge turning points for the North that really put the war in their favor. So we're going to talk about those two, and I'm going to actually kind of draw up what was going on with Gettysburg on the board, and you'll kind of have an idea of what the battlefield looked like. Typically, we normally watch a movie called Gettysburg because it's about the Battle of Gettysburg. It's a great movie. We watch that at the end of the year. I would highly suggest you watch that at home if you can get access to it. It's called Gettysburg. Um, and so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and show you on the board over here. Let's walk over here like we're in class. Look at that. Back at school like normal. Okay, so I have on the board, we've got the Northerners in the blue X's and then the Southerners and the C's down here at the bottom. Okay, so at Gettysburg, at this battle, okay, in about June, July of 1863, Robert E. Lee, he makes another attempt to invade the North. Okay. Now, Gettysburg, to give you an idea of where this is, let's come back. Walking through here. Okay. Gettysburg, it's in Pennsylvania. Okay. It's right there on the border. Okay. See it right there, Gettysburg. So, yes, Maryland, border state. Okay. Not part of the Confederacy. Pennsylvania, part of the Union, and there's Gettysburg. So this is where this is taking place, right on the border. I mean, they're not just but a few couple hundred miles, not even 100 miles away from the South in Virginia here. Okay, so on this battlefield at Gettysburg, the South, they are invading, obviously, from the South. And then the Northerners are waiting for them. Now, the North, they are expecting reinforcements, but they are not guaranteed these reinforcements. They're not sure if they're going to come or not. The South, they do have them outnumbered at the beginning of this battle. Now, this battle takes place over about 3 days. And Lincoln, he is hoping to squash this rebellion. It's got to be over. We've got to find a way to end this war quickly. And he keeps going through generals who just aren't getting the job done. They're not finishing the war the way he wants them to. He's letting these generals who are in charge, they're letting Southerners escape. They're letting them leave when they either retreat or end a battle. Either way, they're not stopping this war. They're not capturing the enemy, and they're letting it continue. Okay. And this battle turns out eventually to not be that much different until a little bit later. Okay. So at this battle, we've got the South invading Gettysburg, and the North is waiting on reinforcements. So they're hoping that people come. And the first couple days of this battle are going well. Okay. The South, they are going and they are trying to flank them, which means they're sending soldiers this direction here to try to come around the edges and basically get the North from both sides and even start coming from behind. Okay. That's the idea. Okay. Luckily for the North, they have some very strong units on the flanks. Okay. They are able to stop these advances by the South. Okay. So they are kind of containing them. Now, after a couple of days of battle, there's a guy, General Pickett. Okay. Now, Pickett decides to charge the middle of the battlefield. Okay. So I'm going to move this over here in case you want to write this down. Pickett, he decides to charge the middle. So he takes a large group of men and decides if we can come in and hit them in the middle right here. Okay. Then the North would have to send more reinforcements in here to stop that charge. Okay. And if we do that at the same time as sending even more men around the edges, then we can kind of circle around them and capture them and defeat them. Okay. Unfortunately for General Pickett, he did not know about the reinforcements coming from the North. So the North gets a ton of reinforcements and they send them straight to the middle of this battlefield because they know that the people on the edges, they are containing the edges very well. Okay, so the South isn't able to go around them the way they want to. They're not able to be successful in this middle part of the battlefield like they thought. So this charge, it becomes known as Pickett's charge because he's the one that came up with this idea. If we can hit them hard in the middle, then they'd have to send reinforcements, which would make the edges weak, which now means we can capture them. Okay, the South thought they had an advantage because they had more people, but they were wrong. The reinforcements showed up and they were able to end up winning this battle. Okay, so Pickett's charge, what I would definitely want to write down for my notes on Pickett's charge is it was not successful. Okay, this battle eventually ends up being won by the North. So I'm going to go back to this first slide here in case you want to write any of this down. The Gettysburg battle is won by the South, or by the North. Excuse me. Gettysburg is won by the North. After that battle, Abraham Lincoln comes to give a speech at Gettysburg. Okay, and he actually goes to the battlefield where there were thousands of soldiers who died. This was the bloodiest battle of the entire Civil War. Now, Antietam, we talked about that being the bloodiest day. That was a single day battle. Gettysburg was over 3 days, and there were thousands of men that were lost. Okay, so we're going to listen to the Gettysburg Address given by Abraham Lincoln. Okay.
Fourscore and 7 years ago.
I'm going to pause it right there to tell you what 7 years ago means. Now, 7 years ago, we've heard that before. You've probably heard it somewhere. A score is worth 20 years. So 4 would be 80 years. 4 times 20 is 80. And then 7. So 7 is 87 years ago. Abraham Lincoln is referring to back when we were a country, when it was 1776, okay, 87 years before this. What was our country like? What was going on in our country that made us feel united? So that's where he starts. He says, let's remember back to when we were a united nation.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here, dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom. And that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
All right, so that was the Gettysburg Address, and he was talking about how it's important that we finish this work that we started. We want to make sure that these lives weren't lost in vain. Basically, what that means is since we've already started this, since we've lost so many people, in fact, in this battle, there were, I think, about 24,000 casualties, and 7,000 of those were deaths. So over 7,000 people lost their lives between the North and the South during that 3-day battle. Okay, so that battle, Gettysburg, big turning point, huge turning point for the North. They start to gain momentum. The next turning point that I want to talk about is Vicksburg. Okay, now at this time, I'm going to show you on our map here in the classroom. At this time, the South had pretty well controlled the Mississippi River for the majority of the war, the southern half at least. Okay. If we think back to the first day of notes, when we're talking about the plan for the North, the Anaconda Plan was the idea that the North would set up a blockade, a naval blockade, preventing the South not only from trading with other countries, but also they would not have the ability to travel along the coast with their own naval ships. And then the next part of that plan was to invade the Mississippi River. And once they invade the Mississippi River, then they would have almost complete surrounding around the South. And once they get to that point, then they would be able to squeeze them like a snake, okay, like the anaconda. So Vicksburg, okay, is right here in on the Mississippi River in Mississippi, okay. Vicksburg was very well controlled by the South at this point. General Grant led his men up the Mississippi River, and eventually they ended up taking control of the fort at Vicksburg, and eventually they were able to destroy any other strongholds that the South had along the Mississippi River. So now the Union, step 2 of their plan is coming through. They've set up the blockade. They're doing well with the blockade. They are stopping the invasions from the South into the North. Okay, this battle at Vicksburg, eventually, it's won at the same time, almost simultaneously, the same time that Gettysburg is won. So this battle, this war is being fought on multiple fronts, which means there's multiple areas where it's going on at the same time. Okay, so at this battle at Vicksburg, the North claims victory. At the Battle of Gettysburg, the North claims victory. So we have victories on separate parts. The North can now start to squeeze, okay? And once they start to squeeze, that's where we see the North really take control of this war, okay? Which takes us to our next point right here, okay? Total war. This guy right here, look at him. This dude is tough, okay? He looks like he would just punch you in the throat for just looking at him wrong. This guy's name is William T. Sherman, and he's a Union military leader, and General Grant appointed him to finish this war. Okay, so at this point, General Grant is commander of the Union Army. He appoints General Grant to finish off the South. He appoints General Sherman to finish off the South. So William T. Sherman, this bad-looking dude right here, he is going to start what we call the March to the Sea. Okay, so once the Union takes control of the Mississippi River, their next step is to start squeezing the South, just squeeze the ever-loving life out of them, okay? And that's exactly what William T. Sherman does, okay? Now, William Sherman, let me pull this up for a second here. There we go. Now, William Sherman, he instructs his men to destroy everything in their path as they squeeze the South. And they make their way all the way across to Savannah, Georgia, which is right here on the coast. Every town they come across, they burn it to the ground. Every railroad line or railroad tracks that have been laid by the South, not that many, but every railroad line they find, They pull it up out of the ground, and not only do they just pull it out of the ground, they take their men and push them across trees to bend those railroad tracks to where they're never going to be able to be used again. Every farm that they encounter, every plantation, they burn it to the ground. They completely destroy the South during this march to the sea. Up until this point, the South and the North, they've almost had like an agreement, and there's no real agreement here. It's like they had this agreement that they wouldn't really just totally destroy one another. They're fighting this war, and the North wants to win, the South wants to win, but at the same time, it's brother fighting brother. There's family members who are in the South and in the North that are competing here. So this is a very emotional war because a lot of times there's family members fighting against each other. Okay. So the idea of just destroying your enemy and killing everyone involved is something they tried to avoid. But William T. Sherman, General Grant, they knew that that was the only way to end this war. Before this, if there was a regiment that retreated, they would let them go. They're not going to go capture them and kill them all. Not anymore. Okay. There are no retreats. They are not allowed to retreat. And that's one of the things that Sherman told his men. We will never retreat. And if they retreat, we're going to follow them. We're going to catch them and we're going to kill them. Okay. William T. Sherman and General Grant were not messing around. They were ready to end this war. This war, we're going to talk about the statistics later, but over 600,000 people lost their lives in this war. And it just drug on and on and on. And the only way to end this was with what William T. Sherman and General Grant did with total war. We're going to wrap up this unit with our next day's worth of notes. And our next unit will be about reconstructing. How are we going to rebuild this giant mess that we just made down here in the South? We've got to find a way to make our country whole again. So when we talk about reconstruction, a lot of what we'll be focusing on is the damage that was done in the South. There's not so much done in the North, okay? The few invasions that we made, the Southerners made into the North, they weren't that impactful as far as taking away property. The South is a mess, okay? So our next unit, which we still got another day's worth of notes, our next unit is about reconstruction. It's not just about how do we physically rebuild these cities and towns and plantations that were destroyed, but how do we reconstruct our country into a political state that is well and strong and creates a strong union, okay? So hopefully you got something out of today. Big picture ideas, going back, Gettysburg, okay, bloodiest battle of the war. Over 20,000 people that were killed or injured, 7,000 deaths, okay, over 7,000 deaths in that battle. The Battle of Vicksburg, okay, the key point on Vicksburg, and I'll write this down, the key point on Vicksburg is this is where the Union takes control of the Mississippi River, which is the big part of their Anaconda Plan, okay? And once they take control, here's the next part, total war, okay? This is where they completely destroy the South. The Union forces go from west to east, destroying everything in their path, and now we are going to see the end in sight. We're really close to finishing up this war, and we'll talk about how it ends tomorrow, okay? Or not tomorrow, whenever you watch your Day 5 notes, okay? I hope you're enjoying this. Hope you're having a great day, and take care of yourselves. Stay healthy, and don't forget to wash your hands. Bye-bye.